I'm not gonna lie, pies are my favorite part of Thanksgiving dinner, but it was always a pain to transport them back and forth. And I've looked at those plastic pie carriers and I thought, I can build something better. And so I did. And I absolutely love this. This is a 2-pie carrier. And really, if you had small pies, you could fit a third one in here. And both the front and the back have an acrylic cover. So it's more like a pie display case. And the front easily slides right out, and you can access your beautiful pies. The shelf here has got held up with shelf pins, so it's fully adjustable. If you've got a really thick pie below, then you can definitely make room for 2 pies in this. And I've partnered with Craig Tools for this really fun afternoon build, so let me show you how I did it. The pie carrier is made completely out of a 1x12 board. Now I decided to use up some scraps of hardwood to create my 1x12 board for the sides. And so what I ended up doing was cutting some walnut, maple pieces together, and I glued them up just like a face frame cutting board. And that is going to give me really fun design on the outside. Also was able to use up a bunch of scraps of lumber. This is a completely optional step, and you do not have to do it, but if you want to use up some scraps, this is a fun way to do that. Once I had my boards all glued up, I took them over to my Craig ACS, and I used it to trim them all to the 11¼ inch thickness, which is the width of a typical 1x12 board. And the ACS is great because you can set your stops and it makes quick repeatable cuts. So once I got it set up for the first cut, I was able to quickly trim all of my boards to width. Then I'm able to make some adjustments and trim them to length according to the cut list that you can find in the plans. I'll put the link in the description below. Now that I have all my pieces cut and ready to go, I need to do a little bit more to my side pieces before I can start assembling the pie carrier. For me, it is very important that this pie carrier has a handle because when I'm carrying things to Thanksgiving dinner, I am usually not just taking pies, but I have a lot of stuff in my hands to move at the same time. So I'm creating this box that holds the pies to kind of mimic a standard traditional wooden toolbox with a dowel on top. So I've got my dowel, and I'm going to measure out and cut the side boards so that they have an angle on the top and then drill a hole in the center the exact width of my dowel. Now, I found a poplar dowel to use, but it doesn't really match. So I'm going to stain it with some dark walnut stain, and this will allow it to blend in with the walnut accents on the sideboards and make it just look really nice, hopefully with the other colors that I already have going on. I've got my angles all marked out on the boards, and I'm going to be using my ACS to make these angled cuts as well. One of the great things about the track on the ACS is you can see exactly where the edge of your blade will be cutting once it is fully set up. So it's easy for me to place my board in here and line up that angled cut with the edge of my track. Then I can just cut right down it with the saw and have beautiful angled cuts every single time. With all of the angled cuts finished, I'm going to clean up the top where the handle is going to go with some sanding, just curve those over to give them a nice curved edge. Then I mark out where the center of my dowel is going to be. Now I've cut the dowel so it will go 3/8 inch into each side of my board. And so I'll take those over to the drill press and just do a 3/8 inch deep hole, the exact same diameter as my dowel, and take it, I like to take it just a slight bit more than a 3/8 inch. That way I have a little bit of wiggle room when I glue everything together. There are 2 more things that need to happen before I can assemble my pie carrier. On the sideboards, I'm going to be adding some shelf pin holes. That will allow me to put a shelf in here. Now the reason I'm doing it on shelf pins is because sometimes you'll have really short pies, like a pumpkin pie, and then sometimes you might have really tall pies, like a meringue pie, and that way you can adjust your shelf a little bit depending on the size of pie, or like a cheesecake if you've got one shorter and one really big one. And I'm using the Craig shelf pin jig. Super easy to add shelf pins to any project, and I absolutely could not live without this jig in my shop. The second thing that needs to happen is to add our groove for the sliding plexiglass front. The groove is added with the ACS. I'm marking where the groove will start based off of the back of the shelf. Now I'm going to be adding this groove to both the side pieces as well as the bottom piece. On the ACS, I'm going to set up the guides for how far away I want that that groove for the plexi. Then I can set this and add the groove to both side pieces as well as the bottom piece. I may need to do 1 or 2 passes in order to fit the plexi piece that I'm going to use on my pie carrier. Now the one I have is right around 1/8 of an inch, so it just depends on how tight you want it to do 1 or 2 passes until it slides very nicely in that groove. Then you're going to reset the depth of your ACS saw to cut all the way through. And on the top piece, you will cut all the way through on that mark. So the back of the groove will be flush with the back of the top piece. That allows that to slide right in front of it, and you don't have to worry about measuring out what the sizing is, because you've just set your ACS up and it does it all on its own. And I'm going to be assembling my pie carrier with pocket holes. So I've set my pocket hole jig for 3/4 inch thick material and drilled 4 pocket holes on the underside of the top board as well as the bottom board. And the underside of the bottom board is the one opposite of the groove. Now I can set this all up, and using wood glue and 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws, attach the bottom board to one side and then attach the top board. And I'm making sure that that is at the same height as the peak ends. And then I will glue in the dowel on one side. So I'm attaching everything to one side board first. Then I can add glue to the tops of those and attach the second board onto it, making sure that things are nice and square. Now I will note that I did fully sand everything down before attaching it together. This is going to be a nice tight fit. It will be very hard to get in and get everything sanded once it is assembled. So it's very handy to do the sanding prior to the assembly. Once it's all assembled, let that glue dry. If there is any glue squeeze out, you can use a chisel to scrape that right off once it is dry. Don't wait too long. Usually wait till it's dry but not fully hardened, and that's the easiest time to remove the glue squeeze out. And there it is. Now I guess if you're really careful and not worried about your pies falling out the back, you could call it done right now. But I know I want to secure those pies because they are the most important part of Thanksgiving. So I've got some plexiglass or acrylic left over from some other projects. So I am going to measure the amount needed for the front groove, and on the back I'm going to cover it, the entire thing all the way. Now the back, I'll pre-drill some holes and I'll nail it in with just some little tiny wire nails that I have on hand. And on the front, once it's all cut, I will drill a hole in the top to use as a little handle. I can use the drill press. I'm going to use the exact same size of hole that I did for my dowel. It's all set up and ready to go. And I'll drill that through, and then all you have to do is drop your plexiglass right into it, and that'll help secure it. And when you're ready to serve pies, you just slide it right out. Now before I do attach the plexiglass on the back, I will make sure to seal it. I'm going to be using a food grade sealer, treating this just like a cutting board, because I used maple and walnut, so I can seal it with a nice tung oil, and it'll be ready for all of those delicious Thanksgiving pies. And now your pie carrier is all done. I used a 1/4 inch piece of acrylic for my shelf because I didn't have enough scraps of the maple or the walnut that I used for the sides and the top. But I actually really love the look of this acrylic on it because it makes it look like an actual display cabinet that you would see in a bakery. And then all you have to do is slide in your front slot, the acrylic on the front, and you are ready to transport your pies wherever you need to go. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit the like button and follow along at housefulofhandmade.com for many more fun things to build.